Sabah BANDOUI. She is from Balochistan, occupied by Iran. Balochistan has two parts, one in Iran and the other part is in Pakistan. So she is from the Iranian part of Balochistan.
Thank you very much, Professor Newman. Just 1 second while I get my PowerPoint. So, dear honourable speakers and invited guests, and ladies and gentlemen, allow me to take you through a brief history of Balochistan to give you an idea of how the situation we are in today has been created. So you can see from the map behind you that Balochistan was basically a region in this part, so part in Pakistan, part in Afghanistan, and part in Iran. Sorry. And you can see on the map the amount of the region that is being covered by Balochistan, the land of Balochistan on its own. So you can see that this is the map of Balochistan in 1828, and it was actually after the First World War, during the First World War, that period of time, that it was occupied by British colonial powers. Ever since then, Balochistan has been located in an area which has very high and very rich source of resources, and because of its location in the world, it has been it's in a very strategic location. You can see here that you have the Persian Gulf, and then the access that a lot of colonies wanted, that they can access again to Asia, Central Asia, and so on. Tactically, it has been used deliberately. It has been kept backwards in terms of social, economic, and cultural progression. Just keep moving on from here, so just a few pictures. Now, I will be talking mostly about Western Balochistan occupied by Iran. You can see that the land that it covers is around 280,000 kilometers squared and a population of roughly 4.8 million people. The main language is Baluchi or Brahui. Around 70% of the population live below the poverty line. 2/3 of the population do not even have access to clear drinking water, even though this is one of the most richest, most resourced regions of this part of the world. Only 50% of students continue their primary education. So, what I wanted to bring to your attention is that this region has recently been found to have a lot of oil resources. In 2004, Iranian newspapers announced that 6 oil blocks had been attracted to their interest, and the major oil companies, including American ones, have moved into this region to extract this oil. Most of these, again, blocks are in Balochistan. So the geopolitics, very briefly, you can see that it's a fantastic place for a lot of the colonies to come in and have access to mostly India, China, and many other countries around, in order to extract a lot of the hot water for all of these countries of Central Asia, including China, actually comes from this part of Balochistan, which is extracted, and loads of oil and gas pipes and water pipes have been built and are now in operation. China and India have particular interest in the region to fulfill their demand for energy. Many pipelines have been built to accommodate these. Now, in eastern Balochistan, so this is occupied by Pakistan, in a region, a city called Gwadar, you can see on the map there. It's a very interesting point again, because this area is rich with gold and copper mines. And again, it's been a lot of Chinese investors have gone in there and actually extracting as much as they can of the natural resources and exploiting this region. Again, what percentage of this interest is going to the Baloch people? Apparently 2%, but is this actually taking place? It's questionable. Now, these projects that are that I've mentioned do not involve any Baluch locals, and none of the only 2%, as I said, is being apparently put into developing Balochistan. Again, this has not yet been seen. Even though everybody knows that this is the most economically deprived area in this region. In a recent event, it is interesting to note that Khamenei, the religious leader of Iran, plans to send 3 million non-Baluch to migrate to Chabahar, which is a port in Iranian part of Balochistan, to create the next big Dubai of the region, but not in the hands of Baluch people. And again, all non-Baluch businessmen are intended to go to this region. So what about the human rights situation now? So the Iranian parliament has passed a new law to stop executions linked to drug trafficking. But what was not mentioned was that Larijani, the head of the judiciary system, has ordered the immediate execution of all of those on trial, even though these trials have not been fulfilled and have not been concluded. And this comes into place immediately, before this law comes into place, even though, again, a lot of these people are just suspects and they have not been actually accused as of yet. Another point to mention is the prisons in Balochistan are actually full. The poverty, you can see the pictures. Does this look like a region which has absolute rich resources of oil, gold, copper? That's questionable. You can see that a lot of people are living in makeshift tents, in camps, with very little, if there is any, drinking water. Children's schools are, a lot of them are in open air schools, and last year it was noted that in Balochistan was the most hottest point in the country ever recorded. I think it was 73 degrees Celsius. Yes. Again, how can you survive in these conditions without adequate or any clean drinking water? Another point to bring to your attention, ladies and gentlemen, is last year, at the beginning of 2016, there was a whole village where the men were executed because, again, being linked to drug trafficking. Were they given fair trials? It's questionable. A lot of Baluch people are put into this situation where there is a lack of job opportunities, there's a lack of income for the main breadwinners, the men. And what they're forced into doing is perhaps getting into some sort of trafficking with Pakistan, bringing some sort of resources to be able to feed their families. And then this is used as a reason to then execute and to kill the men. So all of the men from one village. How can you do this? I mean, it creates a huge mess. What are the women going to do? The children? There is no income. So extrajudiciary killings and executions, I've already mentioned. It just keeps happening, and it's getting worse. Every week there are reports of more and more bodies that are being found. Up to now, it's said that 17,000 to 18,000 people have gone missing. Teachers, professors, and other professionals who are involved with human rights activism have gone missing. Some bodies have been found dismantled with signs of tremendous torture that they have gone through. So looking at the statistics, it's very, very clear that more than 1/3 of all people executed in Iran are Baluch people, even though it represents way less than 1/3 of the population in Iran. It is becoming more difficult to track executions of Baluchis. The actual number may even be much higher than what was actually reported in the Bruman Foundation statistics. Gender discrimination, another issue. National minorities face multiple forms of discrimination to female populations that face triple discrimination. Again, what I was talking about, the extrajudicial killings where the men are killed, what happens to these mothers, these wives, these daughters? How do they survive with no income, no food? Language. Baluch people are denied of being taught in their tongue language. What this means is they are forced, which was already mentioned with the Kurdish minorities, are forced to learn and have the education in the main language spoken, which is Farsi in Iran. Which means, again, with a lack of job opportunities in this region, what do you do? What do you do as a young Baluch? What can you do? The only option you have is to live in below poverty, or to move to the other regions of Iran. And then you have the religious discrimination, because Baloch people are against Sunnis. So again, very much discriminated by the majority Shia majority in Iran. Another point to mention is that the Sunnis are not allowed to have their own mosques, are not allowed to have their own masjids. So what this means is that they have to make do with the makeshift buildings, which they can then use as a place to pray. So marginalization and exclusion, political marginalization. So Baloch people have never been able to serve as ministers or any cabinets or ambassadors in parliament. One of the final points to mention is that in 2007, Iran started the construction of the Iran-Pakistan barrier, a 3 feet thick and a 10 feet high concrete wall fortified with steel rods. It was included in as one of the included large earth and stone embankments and deep ditches to deter undocumented border crosses from coming in and out. Again, another way to control this area, another way to detain and stop people from being free, being able to do what they wanted. So democratic change, the regime in Tehran makes systematic use of demographic manipulations in order to make the Baloch a minority in their own homeland. The best land is allocated largely to non-Baloch by gathering them easier access to land, again at cheaper prices. You can see a report by Amnesty International that was released in 2007 that goes through pretty much everything that I've spoken to and much more. So the final word is, what do we do? Number one, I think what we can do, what the Baloch Human Rights Group suggests, is international awareness. So being here, talking about what is going on. Stop the Islamic Republic of Iran and Pakistan from exploiting and trying to wipe out Baloch people in order to use its rich resources for its own benefit by putting international pressure on these governments who are part of the United Nations. Show the Islamic Republic of Iran and Pakistan governments that international awareness is a matter, and highlight the human rights violations which are being committed by both members of the United Nations, both United Nations members. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Mr.